Scribble notes when I wrote these quotes. If I offend, pardon me, there's more of me to grow. Creative in my process, enjoy the show. The will is different when you recognize the different strokes. Different folks, same goals, we all want the most. So when we reach the top, we can enjoy the toast. The type of bread we get is fresh about the bakery. Told them don't play with me. With or without a degree, don't question my intensity. Bravery, similar to agencies that want to see you fold. So just pray for me. Yeah, Einstein with my energy.
Welcome to the Scribble Notes podcast. I am super excited to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Why don't you, even though you don't really need an introduction, I feel like anyone who's listening to this or watching this knows already, but why don't you introduce yourself for the listeners? Let them know who you are.
Oh, thank you so much. That is so sweet. My name is Jenna Moreci. I am a award-winning, best-selling dark fantasy romance author. The series I'm currently working on is the Savior series. Right now, The Savior's Champion and The Savior's Sister are available for purchase, with the third book, The Savior's Army, coming along the way. But I'm also a YouTuber over on YouTube with the channel Writing with Jenna Moreci. We've got an audience right now. I think it's a little bit over 265,000 subscribers, and we just chat about writing. I give writing advice, I give publishing and marketing advice, and we also, have some fun, make some jokes, some salacious humor, a dick joke here and there, and talk about tropes we like, tropes we hate, why they work, why they don't, all that good stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
We love all that. We love all the writing, all of the things. So to start with, how did you get started on this path? I know this is not your direction to start with, right? You were in the business world doing a whole different life before this. How did you get started in the writing YouTube space?
Well, I've wanted to be a writer my whole life. It's literally been my lifelong dream since I was 6 years old. In the first grade, we would once a week, we would devote a day to writing books. It was just construction paper books. And I wrote my first book. It was called The Funeral, which made my teacher concerned for reasons that I can't fathom. She had to have a talk with my mom. Yeah, it was an omen for things to come. But basically from that point on, I was hooked. I was researching storytelling and I wanted to be a writer. And, my parents had good intentions. All the teachers around me had good intentions, but they all said the same thing, like, writing isn't the most stable career. You should pursue something else. So by the time I was in college, I went to business school. I got a degree in business with a concentration in finance, and I went to work as a stockbroker. So very different from writing.
Completely different.
Right, just slightly adjacent, slightly. And I was working the job. I'm one of the few creatives who's good at, writing and math. They don't usually go together. So I was good at it, but I hated it. I hated working there. And basically it got to a point where I was like, this is it. This is going to be my life. I'm going to come home from work and just be counting the hours of freedom until I go back. So I figured, you know what, I'm just going to bite the bullet and I'm going to try to write a book. If it fails, it fails, but at least I can say I tried. And that's how I got started, sort of getting back into the writing industry. And that's how I discovered self-publishing and how it's a lot more, it's a lot more realistic to make it in the industry than it was, 10 years before then. So I started writing my book on the side. I started building an author platform, trying to create a presence. I started with blogging and I was doing okay with that. I had an audience of like 200-ish followers, but we had a family emergency. My then boyfriend, now fiance, suffered a major spinal injury and I quit my job. I, stopped writing. I put a hold on everything so I could be his full-time caregiver while he relearned to walk and, regained his strength. And when you have a family member have that kind of experience, it sort of puts life into perspective. It kind of makes you see things differently. And at that point in my writing journey, a lot of people had been telling me, you should put your platform on YouTube because you have a very good personality and you're funny and you would do really well there. And I wasn't interested for obvious reasons. I'm an introvert. That sounded like torture. I was like, no, there's no way I'm going to do it. But after being a caregiver and, watching my fiance, have a life or death experience, it kind of makes you think, you only got one life to live, and I just said, fuck it, I'm going to try it. I'm going to give it a shot. My goal was 100 subscribers. And if I hit 100, I was going to feel victorious. Like, yes, I did it. And 265,000 subscribers later, it just blew up. And now my career is I write books, which is my lifelong dream.
Mm-hmm.
And I make videos about writing my books. Did not think I would be here, but that, believe it or not, that's the summary. That's the summarized version of how I got here.
You're like, I somehow made it here from wherever I started.
It was funny because there was a certain point in building my channel that I kind of thought, you know what, I'm not really going anywhere with this and no one's watching. So I'm just going to be myself. And when I started, I was censoring F-bombs and I was trying to be very, very professional. And I just got to a point where I was like, whatever, I'm just going to do whatever I want. And that was when my channel took off. And it also happened to be my sister's bachelorette party weekend. So I'm at this bachelorette party looking at my phone as my subscriber count is tripling and then quadrupling and
oh my gosh,
quintupling or whatever. And all these girls are celebrating my sister getting married. And I'm just freaking out like, you guys have no idea what's going on right now. And I cannot celebrate because then I will ruin the bride's moment. But yeah, that's how I learned that I was on the right path, is in the middle of a bachelorette party.
You're like, this is actually working. This looks like it's working.
Yeah, it was just not the best time to find out because I couldn't really enjoy it.
We'll talk about this tomorrow.
Right. I didn't want to steal the spotlight, but I was freaking out.
So when you're building your platform, when you started building that, what were your steps? What was that early process like for you? Because obviously it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
You have to learn yourself in that platform. How was that for you?
Well, at the time when I started my YouTube channel, I only found 2 other writing channels on YouTube, and they were really small. I think both of them were hosted by teenagers. And I was kind of like, well, if they have the courage to do this, what's my excuse? I'm just going to go for it. But because of that, there wasn't really anywhere to learn how to do it. There was no, guide. This is how you make a writing channel on YouTube. So it really was trial and error. And I think it still kind of is trial and error to a certain degree, because you kind of have to find your groove, figure out what works for you, figure out what appeals most to your audience. I think one of the most important steps is just accepting the fact that at least your first 10 videos are going to suck. They're just not going to be good. And just let that be okay. They're going to be the worst videos that you make, and you can only go up, and just see it as, this is me figuring it out. So giving myself the opportunity to sort of fail and be terrible, that was one of my steps. Also figuring out recording equipment. At the time I was using my FaceTime camera. It was so.
We love that. We love the phone. We love the phone
right?
recordings.
Yeah, it was just, not the best setup. I'll just put it that way. And I was using just natural lighting from the window and all that stuff.
The light that changes every hour.
And then sometimes the sun would set and then all of a sudden it's dark and it's like, guys, just roll with me with this. I'm doing my best here. But I think some of the steps I took is learning that I would need to script my videos, because I'm very talkative and I tend to ramble. And I'm like, if I don't script these videos are going to be an hour long. This is not going to work. So just figuring out what methods worked best for me, basically, and giving myself the time to do that. Like I mentioned before, I started off trying to be very prim and proper and professional, and that wasn't fun for me, nor was it fun for my audience. So once I gave myself, the freedom to be myself and be a little bit more blunt, that was an opportunity for my channel to grow and for me to say, okay, this is working. This is the path that I need to take. I recommend that people give their channel at least 6 months before they expect anything amazing or concrete. And if at 6 months you're still struggling, it's time to reassess and figure out why.
You think that's because it can be just whatever content you're creating just might not be sticking?
I think it can be a lot of things. You do have to have a personality for YouTube. Sometimes people, they're not entertaining, they're not entertaining on YouTube. That doesn't mean you can't be on YouTube, but you might need to take a different direction. There are some people who don't appear on their YouTube channel. They just narrate over it, and they use, image overlays and things like that. So it could be, the fact that you just really aren't, cut out for YouTube. I hate to put it that way. It could be because of the content itself. I do think it's important to be niche in the sense that you want to target your particular target audience if you're making a channel specifically to, for your author platform. My channel is geared toward people who I think would want to read my books. My books are adult. That's why I use adult language. If you don't like adult language in my channel, then you're not going to like my books because they're full of adult language, that sort of thing. So I do think it's important to be niche, but once you become too niche to the point where your videos are based on topics that no one is going to be looking up, that could hinder you. Another thing is being too broad, being too general, appealing to too many people. Even if your channel does grow in that way, once you get to the point where you're promoting your book, these people might be really upset when they read your book. If you made your channel appeal to everyone and be very family friendly, and then your book is filled with orgies, I mean, you're going to have a lot of
betrayed.
Exactly. So there's a lot of different ways you could screw up your YouTube channel. And I think a lot of it has to do with, it boils down to not taking your viewer into consideration and what they are expecting and what they are wanting.
Yeah, that's actually an awesome point, because it's so easy to think that you have to be as broad as possible so you can reach the widest net. But in spaces like online, there's just too many people that are fulfilling needs in all of the places that people find. So you kind of just have to find your spot and stick to your people, stick to your spot. And there can be a lot of people in those areas. So just honing in is super important.
I completely agree. And it can be a really big mistake to go too broad or too wide, unless whatever you're writing happens to appeal to 90% of the population, which especially if it's fiction, I have no idea how that's even possible. But most people, they're writing in some kind of genre or subgenre. You're usually, like, even if you're writing fantasy, which is one of the most popular genres, usually it's dark fantasy or it's high fantasy or it's epic fantasy. It's always some kind of niche. So you want to target your channel or your platform specifically for that niche and what they would be interested in. And if it means that you're casting a smaller net, it doesn't make a difference because you're casting the correct net and you're getting the right viewers.
Yeah, and those are the ones who really support you. So
exactly.
I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about establishing yourself as an author. What has that been like for you? Because I've talked to a lot of authors, and that process has been very interesting to hear about. Like, when did you feel like you were really an author?
Well, I'm super I don't know, like I'm like very like black and white, cut and dry, like very logic based. And so for me, the definition of an author is someone who has published their work and is making money off of it. So the moment my debut novel was published and I sold my first copy, I was like, I'm an author. Like that was it, because I had published, short stories in magazines and poetry and in little poetry collections and stuff, but I'd never been paid. And so once my book was out and I got my first paycheck, well, not even the first paycheck, because that takes months for you to get. But once I saw the first, order come through, I was like, hurrah, I'm an author. So for me, it's as simple as that. I know a lot of people are like, I felt like an author when I held the book in my hands for the first time. I don't know, like maybe I'm cold-hearted, but I can't relate to that. Like, I don't get all mushy gushy, you know, like everyone I know, they cried when they got their book. Whereas for me, I'm super anxious because it's a proof copy. They're sending you the copy so you can check to see if there's mistakes. So I'm just opening it up and like going through it, going, okay, are there any mistakes? And I've never received a proof copy on the first time, like the first round that was flawless. They always come in messed up. So it's not some exciting moment for me. I'm just like, damn it, this one, the margins are wrong or whatever else. One time the cover came in fuzzy and I was like, what is this? So I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'm just cold-hearted and I don't have this, you know, mushy experience with becoming an author. I just see everything very logic-based. And then you have the release week and everyone's like, oh, are you celebrating? And it's like, no, I'm having a panic attack.
It's like, not at all. Like, what are you talking about?
This is the busiest day of my career and I'm going to be in a wine coma for the week after, you know? So yeah. I don't know. I guess, I mean, at some point you get to a point where you're like, wow, I really did this. Like, I actually achieved my dreams. But I feel like that kind of happens after the realization that you're an author. At least for me, it's like you realize you're an author, you're really into the work and you're just focused on that. And then like a few months later, you're like, holy crap, I did that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree. When I got my first proof copy, I had this, we were trying this border thing for a little bit on the cover and it was never aligning on the print. And it defeated me. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, we're not doing the border. Get rid of it. We tossed it so fast because I just couldn't do it. It just
that was one of the issues I had. It wasn't a border, but on my book, The Savior's Champion, there's handprints. And I think I got 3 rounds of proofs. And the first 2, the handprints were going on to the spine. And I was like, can you just center it? Like, I don't understand what the problem is. And then I see these other authors and they're like, I'm holding my book for the first time and they're crying. And I'm like, what? Like, medication are you on? Because I need to take it. I want to have this
like
euphoric experience, right?
Yeah, the margins inside the book. There were just so many things for me, like, that I was like, all right, this is not the experience that I've seen on YouTube from other people.
Yeah,
happy.
A lot of people on YouTube do ARC unboxings and I've done it too, but I'm like super honest about it. Hey guys, I'm not excited about this. I'm nervous, you know? And I remember for my most recent publication, I was like, this is the 4th ARC unboxing. I didn't film the first 3 because it was so messed up. I said, so this is the 4th one. And if it's not pretty, I'm gonna lose my shit. I was like, I'm gonna be so mad, but it turned out fine. But it took 4, you know? So when I see these other unboxings, I'm just like, how did that happen? Or maybe there are mistakes and they just weren't being thorough.
Yeah, they just didn't look because some people just stare at it like me and just obsessed. So when you released your book, let's say The Savior's Champion, because that was really big for you. That was like a huge book. What did that feel like, especially when you seen all the like sales and you started to see that this book was like really taking off? How was that experience and how did you get there?
It was crazy for me because, you know, obviously, like I'm very proud of my debut novel, but it's kind of like a stepping stone. The first book is like, okay, you're getting your feet wet. And this book, The Savior's Champion, was much more of a passion project because I was writing exactly what I wanted to write, as opposed to, you know, kind of when you're new in the industry, you sort of feel like this is, you might tweak or modify your ideas to fit what you think you're supposed to be writing or what you think might fit trends, or I'm worried what people are going to think of me. Whereas The Savior's Champion, I just said, fuck it to all of that. And I wrote exactly what I wanted to write. So I went into it knowing that, like, if people don't like it, like, whatever, at least I wrote everything that I wanted. And so to see it just explode, and it hit #1 on Amazon on several lists the day it went live, I was totally floored. I don't know. I consider myself a realist, but some people say I'm a cynic. I go in with very, very low expectations.
Closely related.
Yeah. So I was like, I just was, you know, I was expecting it to do all right. I wasn't expecting to hit #1 on Amazon the day it goes live, and then, you know, receiving fan art and I always say, like, I'm constantly reminding people that The Savior's Champion was voted one of the best books of all time by a book depository, and it was listed alongside books by Jane Austen and Stephen King. And I'm always telling people I'm going to have that on my tombstone. Like, by the way, guys, like it still is something that I'm not over. Like, I can't believe that happened. And The Savior's Champion is the book that propelled my career in such a way where beforehand I was, able to write and be a YouTuber full time. And with The Savior's Champion, once that came out, I ended up first doubling and then tripling, and then I lost count after that, the income I was making when I was working in finance. So not only was I, doing well as a writer, I was doing a lot better than when I had the safe job that everyone told me was a superior choice. And then eventually, by the time the second book in the series came out, that's what propelled me into being a six-figure author. And it's just like, I'm not trying to be like, just like brag about myself, but it's hard.
Toot your horn.
It's just hard to even explain how it feels when it's something you've dreamt of since you were a kid. And my only goal was, I just want to make some money off my book and then to be here and to have it so well received when it's a book that is your passion project and something you're extremely, extremely proud of. So it's unreal for me, basically.
Yeah. So for, obviously it wasn't your first book.
Right.
Like, to tell people, like, let's be kind of realistic in creating our expectations.
But I will say, though, it was my second book, and I don't want people looking at that and being like, okay, so by my second book, I'll be a six-figure author. And I want people to be hopeful, but also keep in mind that there was a lot of business strategy behind there. There was also, at that point, I had over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. There was a lot that went into making that book a success. So please don't assume that by your second book, it's like, I'll be a six-figure author and everything will be fine.
I'm going to take off my whole career.
Right.
Just like Jenna said.
Yeah. So just taper your expectations.
So what do you think that you did differently from the launch of your first book to that second one?
Well, in terms of writing, I was confident enough to just abandon expectations and stop caring about what people thought and just write exactly what I wanted. But in terms of publishing, the publishing industry had changed dramatically between book one and book two. When I released book one, your options were basically Amazon, KDP, and CreateSpace. That if you wanted to self-publish, you couldn't have your physical book available for pre-order. You couldn't do hardbacks. You couldn't do audiobooks. It was a lot more limited. By the time I released The Savior's Champion, I like to tell people that the self-publishing industry is at a point where it's offering almost exactly what traditional publishing offers their authors. The only difference I've been able to find thus far is the fact that if you wanted to create a box set, usually it's just going to be a lot of books or a lot of stories in one book. Whereas if you traditionally publish, you can actually get a physical box with a bunch of books in it, So that's the only difference I've been able to find thus far. But right now, by the time I publish The Savior's Champion, you could do audiobooks, you could do hardback books, you could do paperback books, you could do ebooks, and you can have it distributed through the same distribution channels as traditional publishers. You can have it distributed through the Ingram network. And then all of this is on top of the fact that indie authors make more money than traditionally published authors. So all those advantages kind of came together. All the mistakes that I, made along the way, I was able to rectify them with the next book and okay, so this is what I have to do. So it's like the stars aligned at that point. And also when I released the first book, I had 7,000 subscribers. And when I released book two, I had over 100,000. So that helped a little.
Just a tad bit. Right. Just a tad bit. What are some best practices that you find work really well for aspiring authors, or things that you or tips you give people who are trying to start out?
Oh my gosh, where do I begin? The first thing I will say, specifically if you're going the indie route, is hire an editor. Come on, stop being an idiot. There are so many people who are like, well, I proofread real good. And it's like, okay, I don't care if your mom tells you that you're great at spelling. Hire a freaking editor. You need eyes on your book. You need eyes on your work that are not your own, that are not biased. Just hire one. But before you even get there, obviously you have to write the book. I think a lot of it comes with, one, obviously write the story that you want to read. Write the story you're passionate about, because the writing process is not fun the whole way through. There are going to be lots and lots and lots of moments that you're just like, I hate this. This is horrible. It's, it's tedious. And it's a lot easier to get through those moments if you are passionate about the project, because then you have that motivation of, but I really want my readers to see these characters do the thing and kill the baddies and all that. So write the story that you want to read. Also take ownership. I get so sick of hearing people be like, I was going to write today, but my characters just weren't getting along and they were misbehaving. It's like, shut up. You made them up. They're not real. You didn't write today because you were feeling lazy, or because you had writer's block, or because a multitude of reasons that are valid, but they are you. They're not your characters. So take ownership of the job. And also, one of the best practices, I think, is to stop looking at the bigger picture, because it's going to overwhelm you. There are a million steps to writing and publishing a book, let alone marketing it and creating an author platform. So create smaller, easy to achieve goals and just look at those. So for example, I create quarterly goals every 3 months. And one of my quarterly goals this month is to write 100 pages, which that alone is kind of like, okay, that's a big amount. So then week by week, I create smaller goals. Like, okay, this week I'm going to write on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm going to write 10 pages each day, something like that. Just smaller goals that are much more achievable, much more realistic. Like, be aware of what you are capable of. If you're a mom with 5 kids, obviously it's going to take you a little bit longer to write this book because you've got a crap ton of responsibilities. So just separate it into these smaller goals and it won't feel so overwhelming and stifling.
I think you hit on a ton of really good points, because the writing process is not easy. And it can seem really fun, especially when you first start. It's like, yay, I'm going to start writing. And then you're like, oh gosh, I am a chapter in and I hate the first chapter. I hate the second chapter, and I'm already 5 chapters deep and I don't know where I'm going. All that plays a role.
And that's another thing. It was similar with YouTube. Give yourself room to suck, and just understand that the rough draft is called the rough draft for a reason, because it's rough. It's going to be awful. I mean, recently I'm working on the Savior's Army, and recently I was just having the worst time writing this fight scene. And it got to a point where it was taking me days to write it. And I just said, oh, to hell with it, and I had some wine to like kind of loosen me up, and I finished the fight scene, and then I went to edit it whilst sober. And there were so many moments where I was just like, oh my gosh, Jenna, how wasted were you when you wrote this? There were sentences where I don't even understand what I was trying to say. But the point is that it was written. I mean, it was terrible, but I didn't judge myself for it. I had a good laugh. I edited it, and now it's readable. And then I will edit it again at another point in the process. But you just got to give yourself room to be human, to suck, to write some crap, because you can work with the crap. You can make it good, So don't expect it to be flawless out the gate, because it's not going to happen. No one's flawless out the gate.
I always like to tell people, it's okay to write bad. If you just write bad and you got through the scene, you're going to go back and edit no matter what. No matter what, you're going back to it. So you don't have to be perfect on the first round.
And no one's perfect on the first round. So you're holding yourself to absolutely unachievable standards. So, and a blank page, you can't do anything with that, but a page of garbage, at least you've got something. There's got to be one gem in there, you've got something to work with.
Absolutely. So in talking about writing in YouTube, how have you been able to kind of maintain success in both areas for yourself? And what does success look like to you?
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, I think success is subjective. It really depends on your definition. And for me, it's kind of about setting realistic milestones throughout things. So like I said, when I first started, my idea of success is if I could make this a lucrative part-time job. And then once that happened, I said, I want to be able to make this a lucrative full-time job. And then once that happened, I said, okay, I want to make as much as I made as a stockbroker. And once that happened, it was like, okay, I want to double that. So I think it's good to set goals, but make them realistic. I don't know if you noticed, but nowhere on that list did I say, I want to be a #1 New York Times bestseller. Like I'm trying, be a little bit realistic about your goals, maybe one day, but we're not at that goal yet. So in terms of how I define success, I would advise everyone to, sort of base it off of their own, research and merits and be realistic about it. And in terms of how I've been able to maintain it, I think it's in part one because of consistency. A lot of people get on YouTube and then they kind of peter off for a while and they disappear. And it's okay to go on hiatus every once in a while. I went on hiatus for the month of January. It's okay to do that, but it can't be an inconsistent thing that's regularly happening. It helps to let your audience know ahead of time, hey guys, I'm going to take some time off, or I might not be here this week, or, my fiance has a chronic illness. So sometimes I'll say this month I might be in and out of videos, but I'm still here. But anywho, the point is be as consistent as possible. Also pay attention to your audience. Every 6 months, I go through my YouTube channel and I look for the trends in the videos and I see which videos are performing the best and which ones are performing the worst. And I cater my content toward what my audience likes the most. And I think it kind of goes the same way with writing. I always have beta readers and I pay attention to what they find entertaining. Now, it's important to not sacrifice your voice throughout this. If all my readers want me to talk about, or all my subscribers want me to talk about short stories, and I'm not a short story writer, I'm not going to do it because I don't really have that expertise. And if all my readers want me to write about, I don't know, squid people or something, I'm not going to do it because I don't care about squid people. But you can cater to both. You can cater to yourself and your audience by looking at the feedback and the trends and what works for both of you, a happy medium. So a lot of people, that's the next point. A lot of people don't want to pay attention to, the feedback and the audience. And also a lot of people think once they've made it, it's like, that's it. I don't have to learn anymore. I really enjoy learning and growing and finding new ways to improve my channel or finding new ways to improve my writing. I don't look at it as, okay, I figured everything out. I look at it like, what's the next thing I can learn so I can be even better? So I think having a constant thirst for knowledge helps as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels between what you're saying and just, I think, the creative spirit in general. Like I'm talking to musicians and talking to even fashion designers. They've really said some of the similar things, like catering some things to your audience and finding what they enjoy and what the people who support you most like, but also making sure that everything you do still aligns kind of with what you are invested in, and making sure that it's still true to yourself so that you're not losing that piece of yourself as you're trying to make your audience happy.
Which is important because a lot of people do that, especially if you're doing the right to market method, which is where you follow the market and then you write, to appease them. You can absolutely do that and still write the stories that you want to write. You can look at a genre and, or several genres and 3 of them are popular, but you only like one of them. So we'll write that one, don't write the other ones. I know a lot of people who get into writing romance because it's the most popular genre. And then you ask them why, and they're like, well, because it's the most popular genre. And it's like, well, do you like romance? Because if you don't, you're going to have a really crappy time writing this book. And I think readers are going to have a crappy time reading it. So, there are other popular genres where you can make money. You can do both. You don't have to sacrifice your passion just to get sales.
Yeah. When did it all click for you? Like, when did everything feel like it came together? I still don't feel like everything's clicked. I don't know. Like, I still feel like I'm just one of those who's always kind of like, for example, a book comes out and people are like, how are you going to celebrate? And I'm not thinking about that. I'm already writing the next book. I'm already thinking about the next step. I'm working on that. I'm working on taking more time to enjoy the moment. So there are,
part of me is kind of like, it hasn't clicked yet because I'm still moving and trying new things and going with different avenues and stuff. Like, I guess sometimes I think of like it clicking is kind of like settling and staying still. That's not something I like to do. But at the same time, I think the moment that it all kind of hit me that like, wow, I made this huge business all by myself. I think the moment that kind of hit me was probably late last year when I moved into my new house that I bought. And I was like, I did this and I'm a writer and YouTuber, and I'm filling out all this paperwork and bank documents. And they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm a writer and YouTuber. And everyone's like, really? And I think that was a big, and everyone's asking me all these questions. And then they're asking, can I see your channel? And I'm like, well, I say fuck a lot. So don't watch it around the kids. And then, we have movers coming in and they're bringing in recording equipment and they're like, what the hell is this? So I think that was a big moment for me, is moving and coming into this new house. Like, wow, I bought this house and I because I'm a writer and YouTuber, like this is how I make my living, and I did it. And it's crazy to me. I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird that I'm here.
Yeah. It's like recognizing finally, like, I think sometimes it is like the physical change that can come, and it just tells you that something has happened that you might not have otherwise thought. I remember when I started podcasting, I did not have a really nice setup, and like it wasn't something that was all that important. And then my wife and we actually made a studio out of our office, and I was like, oh, we're really doing it. Like we're not we're not just half doing it anymore. And that's when I felt like, okay, this is actually something that's serious.
That was another part of it
difference.
Because one of the guest bedrooms in the new house is no longer a guest bedroom. It's my, it's my YouTube studio and my little writing nook and everything. And at my old place, it was a townhouse. I would film in the guest room. So for a long time, our guest room bed was the backdrop of the videos. And I just remember anytime people came over, I would think like, I hope they don't think we film porn, because it's just gosh. Cameras and lights pointed at the bed. And so then I'm like, I'm a YouTuber, guys. No offense to porn workers. No offense at all. And, do you, but I just was like, just was a little awkward if you have like house cleaners coming in. It's like, I promise it's just
not what it looks like.
Yeah, wholesome writing advice.
So you've had this journey, you become who you are. How has that experience been? I always like to think like, I think I turned 26 or 27 and I felt like I was finally me. I was like, now I'm me. Like now I know who I am. It's different than when I was 23 or 22. And that person who felt like they had to, there's always something that wasn't right about who I used to be. How does it feel to be you now? And do you feel like you've reached that point?
Oh, definitely. Growing up, I was always like, the weirdo, I guess, like very eccentric, very artistic, very creative. Got really good grades, big nerd, didn't have a lot of friends. And, also there's this whole like, I have a passion and something that I really want to do with my life, and having this knowledge that it's just not possible and it's never going to happen. And, there was a long time where I felt like I was trying to modify and mold myself to fit other people's expectations. And now I'm just at a place where it's like, I do what I want. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care what anyone else thinks. It's like, cry about it to someone else. I've run out of fucks to give. And I feel like the first thing for me was, I wanted to feel like I've proven myself. I always tell people, a lot of people complain to me that, my family doesn't support me or my friends don't support me. What do? I always tell them spite is a very effective motivator. Just tell yourself, I will show those motherfuckers, just tell yourself that and go through it, keep writing the book. And so for a long time, it was about me wanting to prove everyone wrong. And once I did that, like it felt good in the moment, I'm not gonna lie. But then after that, it was just about accepting the me that I was meant to be, like, okay, I was never meant to fit into other people's box. I am a weirdo, and that's fine. I'm creative and goofy and silly. That's fine. That's great. The people who love me like that. You know, the people who matter love me as I am. And I don't have to modify myself. And clearly I was right, because this whole writing thing has worked out great for me. So I'm just at a point where it's like, you can tell me whatever you want. I don't care. Like I'm doing me, I'm living my life. I'm good. So I think for me, that happened around the same time as you said, 26, 27. Mm-hmm. I feel like for me, it was like around 28. And then now I'm just sort of like, you know, this is my house. This is my business. You know,
this is who I am. Leave me alone.
Exactly. I don't care. Like, you know, I get comments from boomers who are like, "Oh, you've got a potty mouth." I'm like, "Oh, I don't give a fuck." So,
like, it's working.
Right. Watch another channel. I don't care.
So we're coming up on the end of our time, but I wanted to ask you about handling criticism, because obviously you have a lot of fans, and that comes with a big base of people who criticize, because everyone likes to throw stones at those who are doing well. How do you handle criticism?
It's one of those things where you definitely have to adjust. I didn't expect my channel to get big. So when it did, I wasn't at all prepared. Not that you could be prepared, but I didn't expect it to happen. I wasn't braced for it. And so obviously, you know, you're going to get criticism being on YouTube, and being a woman on YouTube. I mean, I get so many threats and so many like, show us your tits and stuff like that. I get a lot of middle-aged men offering to be my mentor. It was so thoughtful, so sweet. But first of all, I think it's important to learn to differentiate constructive criticism and just hate and heckling. A lot of people see all criticism as hate. And sometimes criticism is, you know, someone saying like, "Hey, the lighting in your, you know, channel isn't very good," you know, and well, it wasn't good, so I needed to fix my lighting. Or, you know, if you have beta readers and critique partners telling you about your writing, sometimes you know, you need the criticism. Sometimes it helps you grow. But if someone just says, "This sucks, fuck you," like, you recognize that that's hate, and that's someone being an asshole, and it's on them. Like I said already, you have to adjust to it. It takes a while to get used to it. At first, it would like really hurt my feelings and weigh heavily on me. But then it gets to a point where you're like, well, this person is sitting in their basement watching my videos, which just makes me money. So thank you very much. They're watching my
all the way through.
Right. They're watching my videos and making me money, complaining about me. Where's their channel? What are they doing? And you get to a point where you start to feel bad for them, only a little, because they are an asshole. So, you know, but also there's just this realization that it's not really about you. You know, they say that people hate on others because they're trying to drag them down to their level. It just gets to a point where you're kind of like, all the hate and vitriol people spew at you, what has it really done to my career? Nothing. I've only gotten bigger and written more books and made more success. And you just develop a thick skin. It doesn't hurt you anymore. And you recognize that it was never really about you in the first place. You know, they see someone who is out there, putting themselves out there, having success, being brave, possibly doing things that they want to do themselves, and they're projecting, you know, their insecurities onto you. And, you know, it's kind of a shame, because if they put that energy into their own work, maybe their own channel, their own books, I mean, wow, like all that energy, if they put it into something productive and positive, they probably could be doing amazing things.
Yeah.
So
it's so interesting, because no matter what you do, criticism comes with whatever.
Exactly.
I work at a university in Connecticut, and I do programming and events. So we do a ton of stuff for students. And one of the things we run into all the time is somebody always has an issue with something, no matter what you do. Like we have a big concert that we put on every year. This year we're having a comedian come to our campus and do a huge show. Gonna be awesome. Huge comedian.
That sounds great.
I mean, practical jokers, whole thing. Students hated it. Some people hated it immediately. Like, this is stupid. I want a musician. Don't know the process. Don't know anything. But it's a sellout show. So I had to
exactly
teach my students. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, you're gonna have critics no matter what you do. Like you can't make everyone happy, and you're not meant to make everyone happy. And some people are just hateful by nature, or they're projecting onto you because they're upset about something they haven't done. And you can't really even acknowledge those folks. And then other people might have opinions that actually help, or might have opinions that are valid, and those are things you might want to listen to.
And I think that's really important, especially to consider as a writer, because, and I don't mean to be mean, but you also got to consider some people are just dumb, you know, like, I remember I got a few comments when I released The Savior's Champion. It's a dark fantasy romance book. That's how it's labeled. That's the genre. And I posted that everywhere, dark fantasy romance. And I got several comments like, this book has too much romance. And it's like, wow, that's crazy for a romance novel. Who would have thought that a romance novel has romance? Oh my goodness. Thank you for the very valid criticism.
Romance in my book?
Right. And then they'll be like, you know, I'm taking down 3 stars because there's too much romance in this romance book. It's like, I don't know what to tell you. And I've seen people say like, oh, this book is bad because the characters were teenagers and they acted too juvenile, and the book is a young adult book. And it's like, well, that is for teenagers. And it's like, that's the thing, is like, I'm not crazy about young adult literature. It's not my thing. So I don't buy it and read it. And if I did, I'm certainly not going to ding it for having young adult content. You know what I mean? So you just got to take that into consideration when you become a writer, because sometimes some of the feedback isn't going to make any sense, and it's not your job to cater to those folks.
Yeah, some people aren't going to make sense no matter what you do.
Right. Yeah.
But to follow up that question, because we are up on the end of our time, what inspires you? What keeps you going? What keeps you motivated?
I know a lot of people take inspiration from books or movies or TV. I get most of my inspiration from music. My 2 favorite musical genres are so similar. It's industrial metal and K-pop. So basically the same thing. So I get a lot of my writing inspiration from music. I will listen to a song and just kind of lose myself into it, and I will imagine a scene or some like fight choreography or something like that. I also get a lot of my inspiration from dreams. I have very vivid dreams, and a lot of what I write or the stories that I plan to write in the future were inspired by some weird dream that I had. So that's where I get most of my inspiration. And in terms of like motivation and what keeps me going during the hard times, I'd say it's a couple of things. One is the fact that I get to do what I've wanted to do since I was 6 as a career. I feel like not a lot of people get to do their lifelong dream as a job. And I feel very grateful for that and very humbled by that. And I feel like if I slacked off and just did something else, it would almost be like disrespectful to, this benefit that I have that not a lot of people get to do. And then the other thing is, my audience, I receive so many kind words, so much positive feedback, people saying that I'm their favorite author, or that, making me fan art, drawing pictures of my characters. They'll mail it to me. If you saw my office, it's like covered in fan art from people. I hang it all up. That definitely keeps me going. And it's very touching to create something and be vulnerable and put yourself out there and have people actually appreciate and respect it. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Where can people connect with you online? Where can they find you? Obviously you dropped it in the beginning, but we'll drop it on the end too.
Well, the easiest place to find me is YouTube, youtube.com/Jenna Moreci. That's Moreci. You can follow my channel there and we'll watch all of my silly videos. You can also find me on my website, jennamoreci.com. I'm on social media all over the place, just at Jenna Moreci, and you'll find me there. And of course, you can check out my books. The 2 that are out right now are The Savior's Champion and The Savior's Sister. They're available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook at all major retailers across all platforms. You can get them in bookstores as well. And if you go into a bookstore and they don't have a copy, all you have to do is ask them to order one and they'll have you covered.
Hey, and okay, this is just for the people who are really wondering, when is the next book coming out?
Well, I had to actually, I have a little bit of exciting news. I may or may not be working on 2 books currently. I know I've only told a small number of people this, so you're hearing it first.
Yay.
I may or may not be working on 2 books currently. One I am hoping will come out later this year. The second one should come out early next year, 2023. So that's all I can say for now.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You have been amazing. This has been so much fun.
Oh, I'm so glad. I've had a blast.
And for everyone listening, thank you for listening. You're awesome. You already know. Peace.
Scribble notes when I wrote these quotes. If I offend, pardon me, there's more of me to grow. Creative in my process, enjoy the show. The will is different when you recognize the different strokes. Different folks, same goals, we all want the most. So when we reach the top, we can enjoy the toast. The type of bread we get is fresh about the bakery. Told them don't play with me, with or without a degree. Don't question my intensity, bravery. Similar to agencies that want to see you fold. So just pray for me. Yeah, Einstein with my energy.